Hi everyone, today we're going to be working on IXL assignment VHQ, graph points on a coordinate plane. So when we're talking about a coordinate plane, what that is, sometimes you'll hear people just call it a graph. But since there's technically lots of different kinds of graphs, this specific type is a coordinate plane. And what it is it's made up of two number lines. So we have a horizontal number line here, which is called our x-axis. And it's just like, the typical number lines you've worked with in the past, where zero's in the center, we have our positive numbers on the right, and the negative numbers on the left. But then that's combined with a vertical number line. And that vertical number line is called our y-axis, where the top half are positive numbers, 0, 0 is in the center, and then the bottom are our negative numbers. So it's just taking two number lines and putting them together. Because of this, we're going to get to it a little bit, deeper here in a second. But because of this, we need two different numbers called an ordered pair or called a coordinate to identify where something is located on the graph, because we have both the left and right location, the x-axis, and the up and down location along the y-axis. Our coordinate plane here is broken up into four sections. We have the upper right, upper left, bottom left, lower right. What these are called is they're called quadrants, because their quad means four, so it's showing the four different sections. When we label the quadrants, if we look at this image on the left here, the first one, quadrant one, is where all the numbers are positive. So that is always your quadrant one. This upper right-hand one here, it's one that you've maybe seen in the past. You've maybe just seen this quadrant, and this could be your first time seeing all four of them together. But that's all of your positive values, because to the right are the positive numbers, and up are positive numbers. Then the way that the quadrants are numbered is it is counterclockwise. So that means it's opposite from a clock. If we think of the way that we read a clock, the top is 12, then it gets to 3, then 6, then 9, and it goes in a circle like that. But for this, we go counterclockwise. So basically what that means, we're going backwards from a clock. So this is considered quadrant one. Then if we go counterclockwise, we go backwards. Over here is quadrant two. All of the ordered pairs, all of the numbers within our quadrant two will be a negative for the first value, positive for the second. And we keep going in that circular counterclockwise motion. Down here is quadrant three. That's where both values are negative, because it's both to the left on the x where it's negative, and it's down on the y where it's negative. And then lastly here we have quadrant four, which is positive x, negative y. And as you can see, the numbers are typically labeled in Roman numerals. And then the last little thing about this is the center of the graph, which is located at 0, 0. It does have a special name, and that's called the origin, because that's where it originates. That's 0, 0. It's the beginning. All right, let's talk a little bit more about those ordered pairs. So one of the reasons we call them ordered pairs is because their numbers and everything are in a certain order. Just like order of operations, when we do our ordered pairs, it needs to have a rule, a pattern behind it, so that way anyone in the world can read it and do it the exact same way. So when we're dealing with our ordered pairs, the x value always comes first and the y is second. A couple things that I use to help me remember this is, first of all, the x-axis goes left and right, because it's like you're saying x, which is no, and you shake your head no from left to right. Then the y-axis, which goes up and down, it's vertical, you shake your head yes, up and down. So the x is horizontal, left and right. The y is vertical, up and down. You're saying yes. To help us remember that the x value, that direction comes first, and then the y, one way I remember it is it's just like the alphabet. X comes before y in the alphabet. Another way is because that x moves left and right. If you're going somewhere, you're going to run before you jump. So that way you can jump really high. Or if you think about it as if you need to go up or down some stairs or down an elevator, you have to walk to the elevator before you can ride it up or down. Whenever you're working with the ordered pairs, you always start at the origin, then you move left or right, and then up or down. And once you've performed both those movements, that's when you can put a dot and you have that ordered pair. And then here we have an example in each quadrant. So it kind of brings us back to that previous picture. If it's in quadrant 1, both values are positive. Quadrant 2, the X is negative. Quadrant 3, they're both negative. And then quadrant 4, the Y is negative. Although this can help you identify the different locations, you really can, if you're ever asked a question, you could draw just a very simple graph and say, okay, well, I know these numbers are positive and this is negative. That's how a number line works. And then for a vertical line, I know these numbers are positive and these are negative. So you don't really have to memorize that. You can just quickly draw yourself a graph if you're ever asked, what quadrant does this lie in? It would kind of help you do a mock graph, because if you had the point 4, -5, you could just say, well, I would go to the right 4 and down 5. That would land me somewhere down here in quadrant 4. So you can always do something like that if you're asked to identify where something is located and you don't have a graph. Just sketch one. All right, now that we've done all of this review, we've talked about all this vocab, let's put it into play, let's put it into practice, and hop on over to IXL. All right, here we are on IXL, assignment VHQ, graph points on a coordinate plane. Before we get started, quick little reminder that IXL has great resources now to help you. They have videos that match every single assignment. So this is something that you can always watch, instead of my videos, or you can watch it in addition to if you feel like you need a little bit of extra help or you want to see it explained by someone else, because sometimes that can help make things click. All right, for our first problem here, we are being asked to graph the point 10, 1 on the coordinate plane. First thing I like to look at is how my graph is counting by, how it's labeled. So when I first look at this, you might think, oh, well, I see 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So it's counting by twos. But look a little closer. Is it really? Yeah, it starts at 0, skips a line, and then goes to 2. Skips a line and then goes to 4. So really, it's counting by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. So sometimes this will happen. It may look like it's counting by something, but that's just simply because they've labeled every other line. It just makes it a little bit more legible. Otherwise, they could be too squished together. So our graph here is counting by ones. Then that makes it pretty easy peasy. Don't have to try to remember to do that skip counting. All right, when we're looking at this, since this is our first one, let's make sure we really label our axes, because one of the most common things that we, get mixed up is we do our points backwards. But remember that this right here is our horizontal axis and it's our x-axis. And in our ordered pair, that comes first, which would be our 10. And then the vertical axis, so that's the one that goes up and down, that's our y-axis right here, which is our second number. So when I go to graph this point, I'm going to start at 0, 0. And then because it's a positive 10, I will go right 10 on the x. And then since it's a positive 1, I'll go up 1 on the y. So I start at 0, 0, go over 10, up 1, click, and it puts your point right there. If you ever make a mistake, you can click the point again and it erases it. So origin over 10 on the x, up 1 on the y, and we have our graph ordered pair. All right, let's look at our next one here. So I'm going to identify which value is which. So my first number is my x. That -9 means on the x, I'm going to go left because that's where my negative numbers are on the x-axis. And then our second number is our y value. That's a -1, which means I'm going to go down on the y-axis. So start at the center, 0, 0, the origin. We're going to go left 9. Well, if this is 8, I got to go 1 more to get to -9. And then I go down 1 since it's a negative. So remember that You can see it on the graph, and maybe you can kind of just remember visually from previous work you've done with number lines and integers that if you're going to the right and you're going up, it's positive. Left and down is negative. All right, let's do one more like this before we take it up in a notch and go for a little bit more challenging of one. All right, our first point here, we have our first value, which is our x. It's a -4. Remember, this is your x-axis. That's the negative side of things. Then your second number is your y. That's a +3. So it means I'll be going up. 0, 0. You have to run before you can jump. You have to walk before you can get to that elevator and ride it up. So we're going to go left -4, up +3, and we have our ordered pair. All right, as this assignment gets higher into the SMART scores, you're going to start to have to graph more than 1 point on here. So this isn't any more difficult, but there is more room for error because if you mess up one of the points, or if they give you 3 of them, if you mess up any of those points, it will count it wrong. So as you get higher into the SMART scores, just be really careful that you don't rush, double check your work, make sure all of the points are done correctly. All right, first one here is the ordered pair 1, 1, 1. First value is my x. I'm going to go ahead and label both. Second value is the y. Remember that you guys have a pencil tool here on IXL. It colors things in both black ink and red ink. So you could use, black and red and do just like this, where you can write it on there to make sure you don't mess them up. All right, for our first point here, 1, 1. Start at the origin, go right 1 on the x, 1 on the x. Now for our second point, it's +2, so right 2, and then +10, up 10. We have both of our points. We're able to hit submit. All right, let's do one more like this, and then we're going to get to one final type, which is when you have decimal values. So if that's the main reason you're watching this video, we'll get to the decimal point value ones after this. But this has a great variety of points, lots of positives and negatives. We'll do one more just to ensure that you're feeling confident. All right, our first point here. Let's label all our values. Remember, the first number is your x value. So that x-axis is horizontal. If it's a positive number, you're going to the right. If it's a negative number, you're going to the left. Then the second value in that ordered pair is your y value. Remember, your y-axis is up here. It's vertical. So if it's positive, you're going up. If it's negative, you're going down. First ordered pair is 10, -4. So go to the right 10 because it's positive, down 4 because it's negative. Start back at the origin for the second point. 7, -3. Right 7 because it's positive, down 3 on the y for a negative. Go back to 0 again. -7, 10. It's a -7 for your x. That means I need to go to the left. And then down 10 on the y. All right, this will be our last question here. We are being asked to graph points that have decimal values. Now, this is possible if it is a decimal value other than 0.5, so other than a half. It does require a little bit more estimation, but on this assignment, any of the decimal values will be a half. So let's look again at our graph here because it's kind of zoomed in a bit. Is it counting by 2s or is it counting by 1s? It's really counting by 1s. They only labeled every other line, but if we look closely, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Since they skipped lines, it really is counting by 1s. So that's good for us to remember. All right, when we graph our first point here, this one's pretty normal. Our first value is our x for everything. Remember, that's left and right. Second value is our y for everything. Remember that that is up and down. So first ordered pair, what we're used to seeing, both whole numbers, 3, 5. Start at the origin, 1, 2, 3, and then a +5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. Even though the 5 isn't labeled, that comes after the 4. or you could just literally count the lines since you know it's counting by one. Second value is -2, comma, -0.5. So negative half or 5/10, if you want to pronounce it. Start at the origin, go left 2 on the X, but then if I only need to go down a half, notice that IXL will let you do that. That's 1. This would be -1/2. So you're just halfway between 0 and 1. For our last point, 5, comma, -4.5, you're at the origin. So we'd go to the right 5, then we'd go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go down a half. So you will be in the middle of that box. All right, it is now your guys' turn to try it. Don't worry about those decimals. They're all going to be half values. And if they weren't, then you would just kind of have to estimate, but you are able to go midway between those boxes. Of course, if you need anything, please make sure you reach out to your teacher or come to a help session. Bye, guys.